All right. What a night, folks. What a night. Welcome to Sam Roberts Now official post-fight coverage. Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley. Tonight, it just went down. We just finished the fight, and can you believe it? A photo finish, a split decision, all 8 rounds. After going 2 in a row, knocking an opponent out within the first round, I think both times, Jake Paul goes 8 rounds with MMA, UFC legend Tyron Woodley to go to a split decision and come out victorious. Jake Paul wins. Jake Paul has somehow learned to go 8 rounds, even though he's only ever gone 1 or 2, and has defeated Tyron Woodley. Here we are. We just finished up the Showtime pay-per-view boxing fight, and I mean, what a riot. How much fun was that? So, you know I love my storytelling. I love sports entertainment. The storytelling part comes usually in the entertainment. And I've complained about this before. With a lot of sports, where the emphasis is on sport and not entertainment, you can find stories, but you really got to pick through a lot of nonsense to find a really great story. A lot of times a story will be told over an entire season of a sport, and it's like, that's hours and hours and hours that I got to watch to find a story. But when you script things, well, you can create your own story at any speed that you like. And sometimes, even in legitimate sport, the same thing happens. So when you look at this, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, as I'm watching this, right, and I'm listening to sports broadcasters that are really good at what they do, call this thing like they're seeing a real sports broadcast, and nobody is winking. Nobody is not. I mean, Morrow winks a little bit. I love that Morrow kind of through his metaphors lets everybody know he knows the deal. Morrow always knows the deal, though. But somehow a story of epic proportions has been written and told right in front of our eyes with young Jake Paul. So Jake Paul, of course, he's an internet heel. And he bursts onto the scene, and he's like, him and his brother, they're like, we're going to do boxing. And I think it wasn't Jake. I believe it was Logan Paul that had the big boxing match with, I believe it was KSI, the YouTuber. And it, like, sold out the Staples Center. And that is when a lot of wheels started turning in people's heads. Not only in the internet celebrities, because the thing about internet celebrities is that for a lot of internet celebrities, it has become difficult for industries to figure out how to milk as much money out of them as humanly possible. A lot of internet celebrities have gotten the chance to host their own television shows. They very rarely work because there's a disconnect there. They think, oh, well, they're big on this YouTube screen. We'll blow the screen up a little bit, put it on the flat screen in your house. Now you tune in at 11:30 and you can see your favorite YouTube. And it's not going to work. It's a different deal. Okay, so how does it work? Well, what if the social media personality is fighting? Oh, well, then maybe you're onto something because you can use the YouTube platform to start making all your training videos. And that's what they did. And you could create this war of words that exists on the internet. And that's what they did. And all of a sudden, there's this market for it. It used to be called celebrity boxing, and it was looked at as a complete farce. I mean, just an absurd form of entertainment. Now, no. Now it's a little bit more legitimate. And to be fair to the Paul brothers specifically, in terms of training and in terms of athleticism, they do take this stuff seriously. Like, you can't sit there and say that Jake Paul is not busting ass in the gym, right? He's 24. A little easier to be in shape at 24, but still not to take anything away. He's in way better shape at 24 than I was in at 24. So he's in phenomenal shape. And he does have boxing skill, right? He's got some skill inside the squared circle. He has learned this thing. And he's only been doing it for, I think he said 3 years, since he's like 21. And he's a natural. He's very good when measured against the average person. You go, well, how is he against professional boxers? We don't know. As famous as he is, he's never actually had a professional boxing fight against a professional boxer. But first one up, and if you look at the quality of the show and the way that these shows are presented, it really is amazing. This is where the Paul brothers and the people around them get credit. It's creating this narrative. And I said from the beginning, look, Jake Paul called out Conor McGregor a year and a half ago. Like, Jake Paul called out Conor McGregor, I want to say, after the fight he had with the NBA player. People are going, no, he's never going to have a fight with Conor McGregor. I said, just watch. Just watch. No, his next fight won't be with Conor McGregor, but just watch. Just watch as the opponents get stronger and the presentation gets more professional. Watch over the course of a couple of years, you create a package in which Conor McGregor actually looks at it and says, okay, this is appealing. And by the way, over a couple of years, we're looking at Conor McGregor. Age and experience has a limit in the world of mixed martial arts. As you get older, you don't get better at MMA. You hit a peak at a certain age. And unless you're like Randy Couture, you can't keep showing up into older age. There comes a point, but if you can cut the cord, you lose a couple fights, you cut the cord, there's still a lot of money to be made because the outside world hasn't really picked up on the fact that maybe this thing is over. And I think that the Paul brothers are banking on a few things. Number one, that they are going to build up the presentation of what Jake Paul is. Number two, through Logan Paul, show how much money there is to be made in a big ticket fight against somebody like Floyd Mayweather, and how easy it is to get that money when everybody is aware of what the goal is without putting too fine a point on it. And number three, hopefully it'll take long enough that Conor McGregor will realize that there's not more money to be made as he continues on in MMA. That we are getting to a point where you need to have a little bit more control over the outcomes of what's going to happen here in order to maintain your star power. I 100% believe that Mission Conor McGregor is still going forward because every step taken has matched my plan from the beginning. So Jake Paul shows up on the scene. He's won some amateur fights. And for his first professional fight, exhibition fight, these are all exhibition fights, he fights this guy from the NBA. And the story is, look, Jake Paul is in great shape. And Jake Paul takes seriously what he does in the gym. Jake Paul has won some amateur fights, but he has never shared the ring with a professional athlete who thinks on a different level, who works on a different level, the discipline. Boom. Jake Paul knocks him out. And when Jake Paul fights just the first professional athlete, the event that he fights at is a total shit show. That was the first Triller fight where I loved it. I came on here and did a post-fight for that too because I thought it was amazing. I mean, I love all of this sort of let's make a mockery of a sport and get the fans of that sport to watch along as if it's part of the sport. There's just something, things are acting in such a meta way. Like, if I'm a boxing fan, I'm infuriated by this whole thing. I can't imagine a boxing fan watching this and being like, well, this is, but my sport has become this. It's insane. There was no professional boxers in the main event of the boxing fights. None. I mean, at least, well, I'll get to the fact that they had an actual legitimate card of boxing that happened before the Jake Paul fight. Because, again, part of the plan here. So the first one is on part of a shit show. And it wasn't even the main event. It was the semi-main event. But it was the Jake Paul launching pad. Because that's the fight that everybody was talking about. That's the one that Snoop Dogg was on commentary for. And he went, oh, Lord, when the guy got knocked out, right? So then Jake Paul moves on. And now he's going to fight Ben Askren. Ben Askren is not just a professional athlete. Ben Askren is an MMA fighter. Ben Askren is a professional fighter. So now we've got a whole new verbiage. The story is not, I mean, Jake Paul is a talented kid, but he's never been in the ring with a professional athlete. Now the story is, wow, Jake Paul is a talented kid, but he's never been in the ring with a professional fighter. Well, guess what happens? It's slightly less of a shit show, right? You remember that one? That one was less of a shit show. First of all, Jake Paul was the main event, not the semi-main event. And it was still a shit show, but less of a shit show than the first one. And what happens? Jake Paul knocks him out like nothing. Like nothing. Jake Paul walks out victoriously. I wonder what's going to be next. I wonder what's coming next. Well, now, people start to look at it. They go, Ben Askren, MMA fans know who he is, but he wasn't exactly a household name in the world of MMA. And also, you know, let's be honest. Showed up to this Jake Paul fight not in the greatest shape in the world. People saw him and they were like, really? Have you really been training that much? So now we've got to take it up a notch. Now we're going to put Jake Paul in an environment that is not a shit show at all. In fact, that we're going to try to take it seriously. I mean, it's a little bit of a shit show in the sense that, like, we're having fun and Barstool's involved in all that stuff, which is not an insult to Barstool, because I want to talk about Barstool in just a second, too, because they were a big part of this night of fights. But now it's like Jake Paul against this MMA fighter that you've actually heard of and who's actually in excellent shape. Now what's going to happen? And boom, this is what happens. I swear, man, I'm watching this fight, and, like, Jake Paul by round 3 was totally exhausted. And Tyron Woodley just would not attempt that knockout punch. It was an 8-round fight. There were 5 rounds that I was watching where when the round started, Jake Paul was exhausted. And Tyron Woodley was not interested in throwing that knockout punch. And people are like, well, you got to watch him in MMA. He does this, he does that. Well, you got okay, all right. But he's not in the ring with a professional MMA fighter. He's not even in the ring with a professional boxer. He's in the ring with Jake Paul, who's very good at boxing. But that's not the same thing as being a professional boxer. You follow me here? I was hyped for this fight. I mean, everything that was going on before it. This part, I loved.
Just my Raising Cane's, you know, it's my lucky meal. One love. Chicken fingers, Tyron's a chicken. It makes sense.
Boom.
What did you say to him up there?
I said
he's eating Cane's chicken fingers at the weigh-in. I mean, this makes me want to start it. There's no Cane's around here. This restaurant doesn't exist here on the East Coast, so it really made me want to, like, start a franchise.
You're dead. That was it. I tried to grab his cheeks, but...
You told me on Thursday, when you look in his eyes, you see sadness.
There you go. Yo, come on. Why would you guys let him back on?
Oh, he touched his hat. He almost got his hat. You remember got your hat? He almost got his hat.
All right.
That would have been a big money moment.
All right.
You see, the Jake Paul robot is hanging out. No Jake Paul robot at ringside tonight, by the way. Interestingly enough, that was the Jake Paul robot that after he beat Ben Askren, Jake Paul dedicated it to his dead friend, and the robot is just dancing behind him. Which is just, I mean, if you could encapsulate the entire presentation into one moment, it would have to be Jake Paul dedicating the victory to his dead friend while the robot dances behind him. No, boy. Now, this was not even the same moment that happened when Tyron Woodley's mom almost got into a fight with some of Jake Paul's team after she was announcing that she was indeed a no-limit soldier. I mean, people got heated about this thing. People took it personally, and I don't blame them.
It is personal between these two guys. Jake Paul,
Okay. So, Jake Paul comes out to the Purge music. Like, it's literally just the announcement from that movie, The Purge, which, I don't know. And he's got LED lights on his trunks that look kind of like a bodega window that say Jake Paul, and the text is moving around his waist, which can't be comfortable. It just can't be. But, I mean, he lasted 8 rounds with them on, so maybe it is. I don't know how they're made. There's a 15-year age difference between these guys. Jake Paul was 24. Tyron Woodley was 39. And, after the fight, Logan Paul was there at ringside, too. I couldn't believe it, dude. When I'm sitting there, by the 5th round, I'm like, they're not going to make this go all 8 rounds, are they? And then when they did, and then they all started telling the story, almost like it was on cue. The commentators started telling the story. Jake Paul started telling the story. All of my other fights have only lasted a round or 2. Now, tonight, everybody got to see me go 8 rounds. I mean, even if he had lost. So if he had lost the fight, then the narrative would have been, well, now we get to watch this guy on his comeback tour. Look, if the fight goes quick, he wins. But this time the fight went long. Tyron Woodley won. Now we watch him train. We watch the montage. He rises back up. And like a phoenix from the ashes, the new Jake Paul is here. But he didn't lose. He won by a split decision. Both of them said it was bullshit in the other one's favor, which I guess technically usually happens with split decisions. And then in the post-fight, they're like, Jake Paul, who do you want next? And Jake Paul's like, look, I'm just going to take a break. If he had called out Conor McGregor again, it would have been a little, like, now you have to stop calling out Conor McGregor because you have to allow yourself, like, this is just the process. The step that we're at now is Jake Paul makes himself into such a big star in this world of, like, I don't know what the guy version of Foxy Boxing is. Celebrity boxing. In this world, he makes himself such a star and such an entity and such a moneymaker that it wouldn't even occur to him at this point to continue to call out Conor McGregor because he doesn't need Conor McGregor. Now, Conor McGregor starts ringing the doorbell. Hey, were you still interested in doing something? Because I just saw your thing over here. However, again, we're not ready for the Conor McGregor fight yet. Jake Paul hasn't gotten to that place yet. Like tonight, the step in the story was that we introduced Jake Paul as a person that can go 8 rounds. And he beat somebody of Tyron Woodley's caliber. But Tyron, after the fight, decided that it wasn't enough. And even the commentators, they were like, you got to give respect to both guys. And I'll tell you, both of them got paid all their money. And you're like, how can you be a fan of a sport where at the end of it, you're like, hey, man, both guys got paid? Like, I'm not watching a sport, so at the end of it, I go, wow, you got to respect the fact that these guys are making money. This is like the conversation that you're having after Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul. That's the conversation people were having after Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. Hey, man, you got to realize, okay, this is an exhibition, and both guys are getting paid, so hats off and God bless. So you mean to tell me you paid $60 to watch two guys on pay-per-view milk $60 out of you? That you ordered the pay-per-view so you could watch these two. Like, people say this stuff to make them feel better about their choices. If you're having a conversation with somebody tomorrow that ordered this fight, and their first thing is like, you got to respect the business sense on the Paul brothers, and they're trying to make themselves feel better overpaying for this pay-per-view because they're smelling something's afoot here. Something's afoot. Look, I'm here for it. I'm going to watch all of it. I love all of it. I hope Jake Paul keeps fighting forever. Brett Kelly says it's pronounced Carney fights. That's what it is. It's Carney boxing. I said it at the last fight. I've been calling it Carney boxing from the beginning. And it's the carniest Carney boxing ever. There was, as Carney a boxing fight could be, was this fight tonight. And God bless him. God bless him. I can't read your name, but it says, this is just WWE predetermined winners. It went 8 rounds because that's what they decided before they took everyone's money. Even if you believe that to be true, which if you do, I'm not sitting here and calling you crazy. Here's the difference between what we saw tonight and WWE. And this is what people will never understand. And this is why I love stuff like this. This is why I love people that are like news junkies, that think that like everything they're being told on television is exactly how the people telling them really feel. That they're not, at least to some degree, putting on characters. That they're not, at least to some degree, following a narrative because of the business of it. That Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul are living a life that they presented to you as they presented it to you. The difference is that WWE doesn't lie about what their product is. That if you go to WWE and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Goldberg could really beat Bobby Lashley in this wrestling, they'd be like, what are you talking about? There's no cameras on. There's no audio being recorded. That's not what we do. It's entertainment. It's a show. We put on a show. There's nothing in pro wrestling that like the business of pro wrestling is not to trick people into not realizing they're watching a show. That's why when I see people who would be critical of pro wrestling being tricked into watching a show, I do get some twisted joy out of it. I'm going to be honest. So after the fight, Jake Paul is like being very respectful and thanking everybody. And Tyron Woodley starts asking for a rematch, which felt a little off script to me. I felt a little like Jake Paul didn't know where he was coming from, but I think Tyron Woodley was realizing, there's literally no other opportunity in the world Tyron Woodley has. His MMA career, like, I don't know if he is officially retired, but he was done in UFC before this fight anyway. And now that he's lost to Jake Paul, like, I don't know where you would go from here as a fighter unless you can test the split decision and get your rematch. So he went right to work on getting the rematch. And I swear to God, I'm watching two grown-ass men, two fighters. They're bickering in the ring right after they went 8 rounds. Usually, when two fighters go a solid 8 rounds and they give each other their best, like the women that were on before Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. Amazing fight. They went 10 rounds. They're legitimate boxers. They went 10 rounds against each other. They gave each other all that they had. They came out. Both of them were worse for wears. Both of them were swollen. The woman who should have won, but they embraced each other after the fight because they realized that they had been through war together and they gave everything that they had to each other. And instead of that, Tyron Woodley goes, I want a rematch. I want a rematch. This is bullshit. I want a rematch. And Jake Paul's like, no, I want a vacation. I want a vacation. And these two grown men, fighters, finally settled the way grown men settle, which is Jake Paul says, Well, you're supposed to get a tattoo that says, I love Jake Paul. If you get the tattoo that says, I love Jake Paul, you can have a rematch. And Tyron Woodley is like, bet. And Jake Paul's like, what? Tyron Woodley's like, yup. And Jake Paul's like, all right, tattoo artist is here. You're not going anywhere. We brought the tattoo artist. He's going to tattoo you. And Tyron Woodley's like, good. Let's get the tattoo because I am getting that check. And Tyron Woodley made the right call. I don't care. If you're Tyron Woodley, people are going to go up to you and they're going to go like, hey, man, don't you feel stupid having that I love Jake Paul tattooed on your leg? I'd be like, first of all, I wear long pants all the time now anyway, so nobody sees it. Second of all, these 7 figures really make me feel better about my decision. It's like Floyd Mayweather said. Floyd Mayweather flat out said at the Logan Paul fight, legacy doesn't pay for my family. I can't buy my family stuff with legacy. I mean, that's his way of telling you, yeah, I could have beaten him if I wanted to, but I chose the money instead. If you could put a price tag on a legacy, Floyd Mayweather would sell his. Tyron Woodley is realizing there is one more paycheck to be had here, and I'm getting that paycheck, and I don't care what you want to write on my leg. I'm getting it. I look forward to seeing the tattoo. I think they should put the tattooing on pay-per-view, too. I'd buy pay-per-view to watch Tyron Woodley get tattooed. I'm going to buy the pay-per-view to watch them fight again. You know, I don't think this is part of the Jake Paul plan. That's why I think that he was trying to get out of it, because part of the plan going forward to get to Conor McGregor is not to have a rematch with Tyron Woodley. You already worked the result of that. That one's done. Now we got to slow down the progress because this guy's going to get a leg tattoo. But honestly, I don't think you're ever going to see this rematch. I don't think so. You might, but I think there will be another Jake Paul fight before long. Maybe around late winter, early spring, maybe around March, April. You're going to see another Jake Paul fight. And I don't think it'll be against Tyron Woodley. I don't know who it'll be against. You know, maybe the Fury kid. That was a name that was getting bandied about. But I don't think it'll be against Tyron Woodley. Either way, I hope Tyron Woodley gets the tattoo. He promised that he would. He promised. By the way, like, Matt A 2020, what's the Haps Nick Gage? I see you. We all see you. He's like spamming the chat to say, what's the Haps Nick Gage? Okay, you're seen. Loser. I'll tell you who's not a loser. Barstool has really figured out their business. Not that I'm saying anything new. Not that I'm breaking new ground with this claim. It's very difficult to have a brand like Barstool and try to mainstream it. Hang on one second. I'm just going to, let me see this. Hide user. Okay. What's the Haps Nick Gage? The thing about Barstool is that it's very difficult to get that brand on a mainstream platform, because the whole idea is that they're kind of counterculture, right? The whole idea is that they're out there doing their own thing. So when they start partnering with corporate groups, it becomes very, very difficult. However, Barstool has figured it out. I loved the setup that they had. The Barstool setup, so it looked kind of like their office. I thought Big Cat and Dave were pretty hilarious together, getting all their bets wrong. And, I mean, they've got to be making money hand over fist. Hand over fist. So, props to Barstool for their business savvy on the Showtime pay-per-view tonight. I wonder if, like, the real boxing commentators feel like they have to take a shower after this one. Like, is everybody in the same boat there? Maybe. From the broadcasters to the fighters to just everybody involved. Are they all just going like, it's a great payday? Because some of those broadcasters have to be boxing purists. And they have to realize that this is the destruction of the sport, you know? I mean, I guess maybe they're saying, well, look, I mean, look at what you had on this show. You had Montana Love became a star because of this show. Montana Love and his furry flaps on his tights. Dynamite Daniel Dubois winning that fight in the first round. By the way, Mauro Ranallo researched to the gills. I mean, just incredible. Mauro was great. And Mauro's not who I'm talking about, because Mauro will do wrestling. Mauro loves the entertainment side of it. Mauro is not the boxing purist I'm talking about. Even Ariel Helwani. Like, Ariel Helwani will do wrestling shit. Like, Ariel and Mauro, those guys love every aspect of this. They're probably more like me than they are like a real sportsy person. Like, they just are, they're having a good time. So I'm not talking about either of those two guys, by the way, when I talk about boxing purists, because I think both of them know the deal, and they always know the deal anyway. But maybe the true boxing purists are sitting there going like, well, we exposed some great fights to a whole new audience tonight that were there to watch the Jake Paul fight. The whole undercard, it wasn't like weird concerts. It wasn't Pete Davidson doing slap fight commentary. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was real boxing fights with real boxers. And maybe they're thinking, well, the people who came for Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley, maybe they'll jump on board for the boxing. But honestly, like, I don't know. I don't know how many people who watch this show. If you told me Dynamite Daniel Dubois was headlining the next pay-per-view, I think I'm going to tell you, just tell me when you got one of the Paul brothers. Tell me when you got a Paul brother and a retired MMA guy, because that's what I'll tune in for. That's what I'm going to shell out my money for. Hector Hernandez says Daniel Dubois is building a name. He had his orbital bone broken by Joe Joyce. Montana Love is a real good boxer. Yeah, these guys are great. These guys are great. But are people that are tuning in for Carney boxing going to watch real boxing? Even the people that don't truly, like, wouldn't admit, hey, I watched this for the Carney part of it. People who go like, no, I just like Carney boxing. Even the people who wouldn't say that, still, no, I think this is missing something. I don't know what it is. Is it that it used to be Super Carney? Yeah, that must be what it is. That's totally what it is. You hit the nail on the head. You know? I wonder if the people that have, like, you know, been waiting for boxing to make a resurgence and they see this happen. Because, I mean, this, I love it. It's entertainment, though. It's pure entertainment. I was really worried after round 3 that Jake Paul was going to lose. Even though and that's how I knew that's how I started writing the comeback story in my head. Because I go, what if Jake Paul loses? Does that mean our whole fun of watching, you know, boxing come tumbling down? Does that mean that goes away? And I go, oh no. If Jake Paul loses, either he'll become a babyface and he'll start training, or he'll come back bigger and badder than ever. But either way, like, you can't lose twice, but you can lose once and do the comeback story. Like, if Tyron Woodley had won tonight, and then Jake Paul had spent the next 6 months training, and then he had come back for a rematch and beaten Tyron Woodley, then the story would be even better. But if he lost a second time to Tyron Woodley, then this whole fun game is kind of over. Which is why I'm glad that Tyron Woodley did not swing for any knockouts whatsoever. Super chats are open. I don't think many of you are super chatting because this is a special, but the normal rule of Sam Roberts now is that every super chat gets read. Not Sam Lehman. They really worked the marks tonight, brother. Yeah, I did have people in my app mentions that were kind of annoyed that I was implying that this might not be totally on the up and up, but I mean, I don't know what to tell you here. I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Hector Hernandez says, Woodley exposed Paul. Jake should not mention boxers. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think Jake Paul should be in the ring with boxers. I think that our entire fun game would be over if Jake Paul were actually in the ring with an experienced, good professional boxer. That's the thing. Like when people talk about Jake Paul, they give him credit as a novice. But it's like novices don't main event pay-per-views. So there's like a standard that you're used to seeing. Like when a novice makes it to a high position in any industry and we're going, well, they're really improving and they're trying to get better. I'm like, okay, good for them. I don't think that they're a bad person. I appreciate that they're learning and trying to do better, but I'm not here to watch novices. Unless the novices are more entertaining. Unless the novices have robots and chicken fingers, you know? Alexander says the first time a Paul gets knocked out, the show is over. I don't think so. I think that they can get knocked out once. I don't know about Logan. I think Jake Paul can get knocked out once. Because he knocked out Ben Askren and he knocked out the NBA player before it. And he did win against Tyron Woodley. But I think he's built up enough that he can be knocked out once. But then he has to come back and win. And then he'll be okay again. But if he gets knocked out twice, he's finished. He is finished. Peter Steenworth, he should move on to WWE. I mean, I think there's more money to be made hustling these boxing fans out of their Showtime pay-per-view money. That's what I think. Taft versus Roberts, I would kill him. Jake Paul versus Bart Gunn, book it. Now, that's what I would love to see. Jake Paul versus Butterbean. Would he go down the way Bart Gunn went down? I would love to see Jake Paul versus 1998 Butterbean to see what happened. All right, guys. Well, I had fun with tonight. I hope you did too. I hope you had fun with our little post show. I'm giving you a sec to make sure I don't miss anybody. But make sure that you hit like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Share it all with your friends. On Friday, we did a Sam Roberts Now where we talked about the Bob Ross documentary on Netflix. We broke that whole thing down. Martin Luther King popping up in Fortnite. Saving OnlyFans. We talked a little bit about the Donda listening party, which I got to hear. I got to hear Donda today. Maybe I'll talk about it sometime later this week. Who knows? Who knows? All right, everybody. And Sam would beat up Teft. I'd kill him. I would kill him. Hector Hernandez says, what did you think of the female boxers? Loved them. That was a real fight. I thought it was great. The women on this show, they had the fight of the night. I thought most of the fights were great. I thought that the Montana Love fight was really good. I love a quick knockout. Love what Daniel Dubois did. And the women's fight was just a really good one-on-one, 10-round, knockdown, drag-out. We're both giving everything we have to win fight. That was the most real fight of the night. I thought it was great. The boxing fights were really good. But standard boxing fights are not going to be enough to bring me in. And boxing has figured that out. You got to have some Carney with boxing if you want to get mainstream. I don't know what it is about boxing, but mainstream wants some Carney. And the Paul brothers have figured it out, and the Paul brothers are delivering. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you soon. Subscribe to the channel. Hit like on the video. Have a good night.